The Rams are Super Bowl champions here in the 2022 calendar year for Super Bowl 56 as they get it done for the Super Bowl that happened on Sunday as they won 23-20 over the Cincinnati Bengals, and really a great finish to a Super Bowl overall. Not really an overall impressive Super Bowl, but a great finish altogether as we are here on the Hooper's Log for Season 8, Episode 22 here on February 15th, 2022. That is right, we were talking about the NBA regular season as it comes to the All-Star break, as it comes here coming up this weekend. We got a couple days left until the All-Star break begins, and then we jump right into really the stretch run of the NBA regular season. We're here to talk about kind of the preview, what's to come for the NBA regular season, what is to be, what is in front of us regarding the overall All-Star break afoot. We're going to preview that for you. We're going to talk a little bit about the trade deadline and what happened, some of the bigger trades, obviously, and we're going to break down for you a big Dear Hooper's Log for you in regards to one particular team. I wanted to preview Saturday night for you in the All-Star game festivities. And I also wanted to give you my prediction on who's going to win the All-Star game altogether, knowing which teams are put together already. So here we go. The All-Star Game Saturday night festivities are pretty laid out, pretty obvious. We've got the Taco Bell Skills Challenge. I believe the best team altogether is going to be the Antetokounmpos. I mean, you've got the rookies, you've got the Cavalier team, and really that's the three teams. I just think the Antetokounmpos are the most talented, and I think they're going to be the most fun to watch and the most cheered for, honestly, just in regards to everything. Scotty Barnes, Cunningham, and then you got Giddey. That should be fun. They should be good, but I think altogether the Cavs team, Allen, Garland, and Mobley, they'll be fun as well. But the Antetokounmpos, let's be honest, they're just the most skilled, talented, put together bunch, I think, in regards to the entire circumstance and scenario happening. So I'm going to pick them all together and how it's all going to play out. Obviously, the most anticipated event that's been the case for the All-Star game, really for the last, I'd say, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, has been the three-point contest. You've got a lot of guys there. You've got Bane, you've got Kennard, Levine, C.J. McCollum. You've also got Patty Mills, Karl-Anthony Towns, Fred VanVleet, and then Trae Young. I think Patty Mills is going to come in and take this one. I think Patty Mills is going to shock a lot of people. Not to say he would be a shocker if he won. Trae Young's definitely a big-time guy who could do it. Zach LaVine's won the dunk contest multiple times. C.J. McCollum's got a good shot. Everybody in this competition's got a chance, but I think Patty Mills is going to come out and take it from everybody. He's just one of those guys who's had improved constantly every single year on his game, and I think from a three-point perspective, he has found a way and found a niche to really keep himself in the league at an all-time level, and that's really where his game is the three-point line, and he's turned into one of the best shooters in the game. And Patty Mills, I think, will take that to this level and be the three-point champion. And he'll represent as we come down the stretch run for the NBA and where we are. Okay, the All-Star dunk competition. 4 guys, right? Juan Toscano-Anderson, you got Cole Anthony, Jalen Green, and then Obi Toppin. I think this one's going to go to Jalen Green. He's just the most... He's to me, from what I've seen in his in-game dunks, are just absolutely ridiculous and fun to watch altogether. I think he's going to be the one to top and the one to beat. Granted, the dunk competition kind of brings a different atmosphere altogether and who is prepared and who's not. So in-game dunks compared to what actually does happen at the dunk contest, which is a whole different atmosphere, whole different layout of everything, culture, and how it's built. I don't know altogether if Jalen Green will be the best guy to win the competition, because some guys just kind of come out and do better in the dunk contest setting. So Jalen Green might not be the guy who's the favorite coming in. There's a lot of guys in this contest. I think all these guys in this contest could win this, but I think Jalen Green's got the chance to do something creative and intriguing, because I've seen him dunk with the best of them in regards to his skills, and he looks like a guy who could come in and win this contest as well. So I've got the Antetokounmpos, I've got Patty Mills, and I've got Jalen Green all winning their contests on Saturday. Okay, so the All-Star game altogether, the teams that are going to be suiting up, you've got Team LeBron and you've got Team Durant. Obviously, LeBron James's team is pretty stacked. I think Team LeBron's going to win this, not because of LeBron or anything like that. I just think altogether, when you look at the overall scenario of how it is, LeBron's team has all of the current guys who are the best players in basketball. I mean, Antetokounmpo, Steph Curry. Obviously, LeBron's on that team. DeMar DeRozan's in the conversation for being first team All NBA, and then Nikola Jokic is the reigning MVP of the league. If you really look at this list over the last decade, it's got multiple MVPs, and then you've got the bench, which is fantastic. Everybody's fantastic in this game, but Harden, Mitchell, Chris Paul. You got Jimmy Butler, Luka Doncic. I mean, you have an absolute star-studded team. That's not to say Kevin Durant's team's not very good. I mean, they got Joel Embiid, John Morant, Jason Tatum. And then you've got Andrew Wiggins, who's all right. I mean, Andrew Wiggins, he's not really the most expected guy. Trae Young. Their bench is fascinating. LaMelo Ball, Devin Booker, Rudy Gobert, Zach LaVine. They've got a better bench, in my perspective, comparatively to Team LeBron. I just think LeBron's team down the stretch, when it comes push to shove for who wants to win that money or to represent for the better team in the All-Star game, LeBron's team is just stacked. Antetokounmpo does not mess around come winning time. Steph Curry, we all know what he can do in clutch situations. DeMar DeRozan in the mid-range is money. Nikola Jokic down low in the paint is a fantastic distributor, and he can score with the best of them. We all know what LeBron can do in the clutch. So there's a lot on LeBron's team in regards to who's going to win down the stretch. Now, does that mean anybody can stop Joel Embiid? I don't know. John Morant is absolutely a star-studded flash in the pan, fantastic player this year. Andrew Wiggins is definitely one of the more fan-favored guys, but he's not a guy who I would consider in the top echelon of the league. Trae Young's obviously fun. Jason Tatum can be clutch, but I just don't have a lot riding on Team Durant in regards to who I think could finish down the stretch being the team. And there's a lot of injuries on Team Durant. You know, Kevin Durant, Draymond Green, those guys are both out. If they were both in and on this list, I would sit there and say, you know what? Maybe Team Durant, but seeing how it's laid out, seeing who would win down the stretch, I think Team LeBron's got the edge. And I think they're going to take it home late down the stretch of this ball game. I don't know ultimately what it's going to look like, how the score is going to be, but we all know the first 3.5 quarters is all about having fun and bringing together some fun atmosphere and a great time. But I think altogether down the stretch, Team LeBron's team is going to be the one that overall gets it done and wins the All-Star game this year. Okay, so the trade deadline obviously just happened, right? And when you look at the overall situation in the NBA with what the trade deadline just brought us, it is an absolute fascinating circumstance in regards to especially what happened in Philadelphia. And their team now, when you look at them laid out, and what they're building and what they're trying to overall accomplish now with potentially the MVP, in my book, the MVP of the league, Joel Embiid, and their overall structure of their roster now. They're a team, when you look at them and you see the overall layout of what they're trying to put together, James Harden is the guy who's going to hold the ball coming down the court, right? We all know that. He's the two guard, but in all reality, we know he's the guy who's going to bring the ball down the court. Matisse Thybulle, Danny Green, they still got him. Tobias Harris, they got Joel Embiid and Paul Millsap. They are a bigger squad. They have a team that is built for power and strength down low in the paint. They are a team that has a bunch of really small guys who can guard on the outside and guys who can get after it defensively. The Philadelphia 76ers are building their squad to do something for the long term and something to be a part of something important, because look at what they are right now. When you look at James Harden, his contract, as we currently sit and as we currently stand by and stand pat at where we are, he has a player option for next year. If this team goes deep into the playoffs, and when I say deep, I say an NBA championship in regards to a representative in the Eastern Conference, this is where it can change everything. And if they do so, and James Harden decides to stick into his player option, which if I were him, I would stay in that player option just from a money perspective, $47 million, I'm sitting there and I'm saying, you know what? I'm going in with James Harden, Joel Embiid, Matisse Thybulle. You also got Tobias Harris, Paul Millsap. You've got a squad that can do something in regards to the final length and aspect of what they've got on the season. I mean, they have an opportunity to make a stretch run, to be important, and to do things that where they can find a way to ultimately impact the rest of the league and where they're going. So I know that Paul Millsap is a free agent at the end of this year. I understand that they're really utilizing him as a guy who can play like he played in Utah early on in his career. I'm not sitting here and debating that and saying that he's going to be a major asset into why they're going to win a championship, but come down the stretch run and the playoffs, he's going to be a reason and a rationale as to why they're important. This is where the team chemistry of Philadelphia for the next 2 months is going to be massive, is going to be absolutely gigantic in regards to their importance and how they're going to impact the Eastern Conference playoff run. Because as we know, the Eastern Conference right now is so incredibly tight. It's split up between 5 games between 6 to 7 teams. That hasn't happened in quite a while. And I think in the last 5-6 years, it's happened once. And to see that and to see the league being where it is, I think the identity of the Philadelphia 76ers is vastly important, which is where the Dear Hooper's log comes in today. Dear Hooper's log, when you look at the Eastern Conference and you look at the overall build of everything that's going on and how we are, where we are within the NBA right now, the NBA and how it's structured and how the Eastern Conference is put together. We look at the top spot, the Chicago Bulls, Miami Heat, where they are right now, 2 teams battling for the top spot in the East. Both have been playing phenomenal basketball really all year long. Chicago's come out of nowhere. Cleveland now at the 3 spot coming out of nowhere, tied in there with Milwaukee, and then obviously Philly's right there behind them. But going from Toronto all the way up to Miami, separated by 5 games, Miami has 37 wins, Toronto has 31. And we looked at the overall landscape of where everything is. Philadelphia is in an interesting situation where at 34-22, if they can find a way to put together some kind of chemistry over the All-Star break, over this time where they have time to put together and see where they are overall as a unit coming into March, if they can gel, put something together in March where they can have an opportunity to distance themselves from the bottom pack, which is Boston, Toronto, Brooklyn, Charlotte, that whole pack. If they can separate themselves, jump into the Milwaukee, Cleveland, Chicago, Miami landscape and be in the conversation for a top seed in the Eastern Conference, they could give themselves an opportunity as they slot themselves for a playoff bid and be a top team and potential candidate to be a championship contender. And why do I say that? What do I mean by that? Chris, you're crazy. Milwaukee's got championship pedigree. Miami's got one of the greatest coaches of all time in Eric Spoelstra. Chicago and Cleveland have nothing to lose, so they're coming into this free-footed. Philly now has all the pressure with guys like Harden. They obviously have Joel Embiid and where everything is. Philly, I think, has a lot of pressure, but from a different perspective, right? It's a different type of pressure, and I think the pressure that Philly has now is they have a scenario and a circumstance where when you look at Philadelphia, they're a team overall that has to grapple the idea now of forming the identity that can get them to the promised land. Now, Milwaukee already has their identity. They have potentially the best player in basketball. I mean, it's not, if you said Giannis is the best player in basketball right now, no one's going to debate that. No one's going to sit there and say you're a clown, because he's clearly won the NBA championship, 2 MVPs. He's could easily be seen as the best player in basketball. You know, we all talk about Joel Embiid and being in that conversation, but for Joel to be in that conversation, he has to allow for this team overall to develop, create, form, capitulate an identity. And it is a major, major project on foot for the Philadelphia 76ers. We talk about the process. We talk about the scenario that this organization was put in back in the 2015-2016 season when they were 10-72 as an organization, and their best player was Robert Covington. This Philadelphia 76ers team over the last 6 years has finally got to the mountaintop of where they want to be as an organization and being in the conversation of a potential championship conversation team. Now they have an overall situation and a chance to do so. It's not guaranteed. Nothing right now is guaranteed in regards to the Eastern Conference. But Miami and Milwaukee are really the only 2 squads right now. When you look at them, you say, okay, those can be representatives of the East just because of the last couple years. Chicago and Cleveland are definite wild cards. Nobody knows where they are. Philly has vastly underachieved on multiple occasions. I don't just say this to be hyperbolic or to be over the top, but James Harden has a ton to prove in his career still. He's gotten close to the mountaintop multiple times, whether it was early on in his career in Oklahoma City, whether it was playing in Houston and trying to beat the four-headed monster of the Golden State Warriors. But this Philadelphia 76ers team has a lot of pressure on them from an identity perspective. They have to form and grapple an identity that could potentially work moving forward within a 6 to 8 week period to really find a way to overall grab the entirety of what they've been trying to do, which is harness the process and be a championship squad. There is a whole lot that this Philadelphia 76ers team has to do over these next 6 to 8 weeks to prove to the NBA landscape that they can continue this type of success moving forward. And it all starts with building an identity and forming a chemistry. And they have to do it at such a breakneck speed, at such a different level of capability. Because if they don't, they're going to absolutely implode and the process is going to be viewed as a complete failure. I don't think they need to win a championship this year. I think they need to get to the Eastern Conference Finals. I think they need to show the NBA world that they've got a shot at doing something big moving forward. And if they can do that, and they can put together a run where by mid-May, they're in the conversation as being a top team in the NBA, that is when you sit back and you say, my God, they did this in a 6 to 8 week span. If they're given an entire offseason for 3 months, figure it out together, play their brand of basketball, gel the way they're supposed to, find ways to add pieces that they need to get better and improve, whether it's physically, offensively, strength-wise, size-wise, whatever the case needs to be. They find those couple of pieces and form the identity that they want to be a championship contender. This turns into a conversation where Philadelphia might be in the same realm as a Milwaukee and a Miami in regards to a championship contender in the East, or Brooklyn, I should say, especially when Brooklyn gets healthy. Brooklyn's in a very different perspective, right? Obviously, they've got Ben Simmons now, who knows what he's going to look like coming back. He hasn't played basketball, and really, he hasn't played basketball in, 8-9 months. He hasn't played NBA basketball for that long. Obviously, Kyrie Irving in his situation only playing half his games, and then you look at Kevin Durant, who's not healthy, and who knows when he's going to come back. That all might change going into the offseason, but if Philadelphia can put together a big identity process that they've talked about for the last 5 to 6 years, that is where we sit there and we talk about the Philadelphia 76ers as one of those teams who could threaten for an NBA title walking into next year. I think it's unreasonable and unfair to say that the team they've put together can obviously put together a run and win a championship, especially when you've got the two best teams in basketball in the Western Conference all year long, and then the Eastern Conference is a complete jumbled up, hodgepodge of teams that could all represent the East. I mean, you've got legitimately 5 teams out East right now who could be in the conversation for representing the Eastern Conference, and Philadelphia is one of those. But is it fair to sit there and think that from what they've formed and what they've put together that they could be the team to beat in the NBA championship? I don't think that's a fair conversation to put together. I think the fair conversation is saying, put together an identity, breakneck speed, see what you got. If you can make it work on the fly, then go into the offseason where you got the summertime, you can hang out, you can let everything simmer, make your signings, make your deals, make your changes, and fine-tune what you got. Then once you fine-tune, grapple what you need, walk into next year knowing that you got Brooklyn, Milwaukee in front of you as the 2 big speed humps in your conference. Then say, you know what? We've been here. We've done that. We've got the MVP of the league. Hopefully, if Joel's still playing at that level and he's still healthy, then we sit there and we say 2023 is our year to dominate and be the NBA champs. Because let's be honest, we can't bank on Phoenix being this good forever. Because we all know Chris Paul's getting older. We know Devin Booker has not been the guy outside of having a Chris Paul or other guys around him, so we can't bank on Phoenix being good forever. We know Golden State is what Golden State's been for the last 7 to 8 years, right? We're not going to sit here and say that Golden State's going to disappear and fade into the darkness and go away. That's not the case. That's not fair to say. But in regards to the East, there's 2 speed humps for everybody. Milwaukee, Brooklyn, and that's years down the road. Brooklyn is not in the way right now. Let's be honest. The only team that's in the way for anybody in the East and frankly in the entire NBA is Milwaukee. If they can outlast and play a Milwaukee squad with a new, different type of identity where they can actually put together some difference and change of speed and change of style type of mentality, they can do something and potentially represent the Eastern Conference. I don't think that's a fair thing to say. I think the biggest thing Philly could do this year is get to the Eastern Conference Finals, have a really competitive series against Milwaukee, 6-game series, a solid 6-game series, 3 or 4 close games, and then they lose, and they look back and they say, damn, we need to run it back. We need to bring everybody back that we can to the best of our ability, add some pieces, and fine-tune it to be the conversation piece in the East. And if they do that, now you're looking at a complete situation where the process may fully encapsulate itself. And that's a lot. It's a lot to ask. Philly's kind of in that same, Los Angeles Rams conversation of, holy crap, they're in the conversation, they're doing what they need to do. There's a lot here that they have to figure out in regards to what they want to do in regards to winning. And it all comes back to identity. They have to have a fully formed identity to ultimately bring together the entire conversation and concept of what the process has been. They have started it now with the correct pieces. I think they have the pieces to compete and contend moving forward. It now comes down to the grappling of the identity. And that's something that Philly has not had this entire time of anything they've done in regards to being successful. Even in 2019 when Kawhi beat them in the semifinals, even when Kawhi beat them in the semifinals, they did not have a fully formed identity. They were very hodgepodge. They did a lot of things that were very different and off scale and off kilter, and they could not beat the Toronto Raptors that year. That's not to say the Toronto Raptors aren't good, because they were the champions that year. But to be 100% fair, even if Philly had beaten them, would Philly have beaten Milwaukee? Would Philly have beaten the Golden State Warriors, even if they would have had Kevin Durant or Klay hurt? I don't know. I don't think so. I think we would have a different narrative of them in regards to their ability to go forward and go deeper into the playoffs. But we also have to be fair in regards to they weren't fully formed in regards to an identity. I remember in that series in 2019, they had a whole lot of different things going one way or the other. They weren't fully formed. 2020, the year was weird. Obviously, 2019, 2020 was a weird year for everybody. They did not play great. And then you get to last year, and a lot of weird things happened for them again because of whatever reason. And there were a lot of problems. Now they're a different squad, but they've got more talent. They've got a different team. If they can make this work and then bring guys back for next year, they turn into one of those top 3 teams out east, and we have a real conversation of, okay, Philly, Brooklyn, Milwaukee, who is going to come out of there and be the representative? And if Philly can put together a squad one more time for next year, Harden, Embiid, Tobias Harris, one other guy, whether it's Paul Millsap if he comes back or not, or whomever takes over that other spot of being a physical big, they have got the pieces in front of them, talent-wise and working-wise, where they could go out and win an NBA championship. They have to develop the culture. They have to develop the chemistry. They have to develop the game plans. They have to develop the rough and tumble, the toughness. If they can do all of that within a 12 to 14-month span, if they try to keep everybody together, these first 8 to 12, 15 weeks are very important for their identity. If they don't make it work here over the first 6 to 8 weeks, 10 weeks going into the playoffs, and their identity does not get formed correctly, this will all blow up and the process will be all for naught. I think these next 6 to 8 weeks for the Philadelphia 76ers are the biggest 6 to 8 weeks in franchise history, at least over the last 30 years, in regards to their ability to be successful and to win championships and to be in the conversation. The Allen Iverson era, we all know that was AI at a bunch of guys, right? I'm not saying Dikembe Mutombo wasn't good. I'm not saying that the rest of those teams were great. I'm because they went to the finals, but they weren't built to win a title. They were built to be entertaining, have Allen Iverson, and see where he could take them. And clearly he couldn't take them very far. He got them to an NBA championship, but they can only win one game, and that was it. Everything else was nothing. And now they've had multiple rebuilds since. This next 6 to 8 weeks is the biggest 6 to 8 weeks in 76er history over the last 30 years. I don't think that's much of a stretch. I don't think it's much of a debate. Obviously, they won championships in the 80s, and in the 70s, if I'm not mistaken, they won some championships too. But this is huge, and they need to form that identity. That's what this next however many weeks is. Trade deadline was fascinating. Let's go into some of those moves before we get on out of here, because I want to give my take on some of them, because some of them were absolutely, interesting from multiple perspectives, because I found that when looking at how teams made moves, I found it fascinating that most teams made moves this year based upon their wanting to improve and get better in regards to competition and not the long-term longevity of what their move created, right? Like the Celtics, for example, they got Derek White in a trade. That is a move to make them competitive now. How many times have we seen trade deadlines happen where a lot of assets and a lot of things were swapped around just so that, guys could have better positioning in drafts, for cash, for things? I'm not saying that didn't happen here either, because obviously that did. But a lot of teams did things so that they could be competitive now. Look at Charlotte. They got Montrezl Harrell and Vernon Carey. And Ish Smith. Oh, sorry. Charlotte got Montrezl Harrell, and Washington got Vernon Carey and Ish Smith. Those moves are built to try and make these teams competitive so that they can make, advancements in their standings so that they can get a better spot in the playoffs. Those were not moves built to have future impacts, right? They were built for now. Charlotte thinks that if they add one piece, they're a team that's in that top 6 conversation in the East. That's not a bad ideology. Obviously, the Pacers and their trade, they did a whole bunch of trading this offseason, this trade deadline. But the Suns, they got who they get. The Pacers are finalizing a trade to send Torrey Craig to the Suns for Jalen Smith and a future second-round pick. So Torrey Craig, another key contributor for the Suns. That is a huge piece for that team. That team is the best team in basketball, and they picked up a guy to try and make themselves better for now. That's a big trade for them. Obviously, the Pacers are rebuilding. They're going to do what they do, but the Suns added a piece. The Mavericks traded away Kristaps Porzingis to the Wizards. Clearly, Wizards trading away Montrezl Harrell because they know they don't need him. He's not going to work for them, right? Because they got Kristaps Porzingis. They're making moves to try and improve themselves now and for the future. Obviously, Spencer Dinwiddie, Davis Bertans as well to the Mavericks to try and help out Luka Doncic. Again, moves to help teams for the now. Obviously, picks were involved, but those are picks for the now. Sixers and the Nets, big time move, as the Nets picked up and bolstered their draft status along with getting guys who could try and fix and change their identity as they move forward. Ben Simmons, Seth Curry, Andre Drummond going to the Nets, going to change their identity drastically, whether Katie's there or not, and who knows what's going to happen with Kyrie. There's a lot of questions to be asked with the Nets, right? A whole bunch of questions to be asked. Nobody knows what's going to happen to them. In fact, I even said it. I said that the Nets might miss the playoffs this year. Now, if KD comes back in the next couple weeks, that will change, obviously. That dynamic, that conversation will be different. But by the way things look right now, the Nets do not look like a playoff team, period. Not even a play-in team. They do not look good at all. And that's not because they're bad. Kevin Durant was making them phenomenal, but they lost their biggest piece. That happens. When you lose your biggest piece, it's like the Lakers. If they lost LeBron, they're not even competitive. We all know that. They're a play-in team right now. They're mediocre right now. But that's because LeBron is definitely keeping them in it. Did you watch the game Saturday night? LeBron was absolutely phenomenal. Again, looking like a top 5 player in the league. I think LeBron now, after the way he played against Giannis on Tuesday night, I said this in the last show, the way he played on Tuesday night was going to determine if he was a bona fide top 5 player in the league. I think LeBron, by the way he played, I know Giannis was unbelievable Tuesday night, but I think the way LeBron and Giannis played, it proved LeBron is not a solid top 5 player. There are nights where he plays like a top 5 player, right? We all know that. But I think that LeBron is more suited as a top 8 player in the league. Ooh, he lost 3 spots. Who cares? Like, if you're still top 10 at this age where he's at, it's unbelievable. But I think he's more of a top 8 player, top 10 player now than he was back at that point. So it's still saying a lot. It's still saying he's doing an incredible job. But I think Giannis proved that LeBron cannot get to that level anymore on a consistent basis, whereas Giannis can do it every night. Giannis can put up 35, 15, and 8 every single night if he wanted to. He's in his prime. This is what he does, right? So LeBron is still a top 10 player in the league. I think he's top 8. But you saw on Saturday, he could easily jump in and have his top 5 player in the league moments when he wants to. They didn't win. They didn't beat the Warriors, but the game was a lot closer than you would think. And that was because of LeBron's presence, right? If LeBron wasn't playing in that game, they would have lost by 20. That's just how it goes, right? So going back to the trade deadline and what happened, Raptors were trading away players. Obviously, the Spurs moving players around, the Pistons, all those trades. That's obviously when those trades happened. Those were all built to kind of swap around players and get things moving, right? Well, the Kings also traded. They got Dante DiVincenzo, Trey Lyles, Josh Jackson. The Bucks got Serge Ibaka, a couple first-round picks. The Clippers, they got Rodney Hood, Semi Ojeleye, and then the Pistons got Marvin Bagley Jr. So a lot of swapping around there as well. A lot of different trades as well from, a little bit before the trade deadline or on the trade deadline itself. So a lot of big things happened during the trade deadline. A lot of unit swapping, a lot of second unit changes coming for a lot of teams, and a lot of pieces being changed up and down. But I wouldn't say this was one of the biggest trade deadlines I remember, because obviously we all remember 2015. 2015 was insane. But from an overall, how does this change the league? I brought it up with Philly. That's where it changes the league. If that trade works out for Philly and they find a way to make it work for the next 6 to 8 weeks, and then come next year, if they can keep it together, that's where this trade deadline becomes one of the biggest in history. If that complete trade fizzles out and it doesn't work out for Philly, well, then we're going to remember this trade deadline as a deadline where a lot of things swapped, a lot of things changed, but at the same time, a lot of teams traded for being good now, which thankfully is the case. And we're not just strictly talking about teams and units and organizations saying, yeah, they only traded for the future. That's still going to happen. That's what the trade deadline's for. It's for seeing what you got, what you don't. If you want to sell, if you want to buy, that's what it's for. Right? That's it's been a history. But in regards to, I saw a lot of buyers buy in this trade deadline. And that's huge for the league. That means that the league was trying to make things happen. I think a lot of people were shocked that the Knicks didn't make a move, that the Lakers didn't make a move. I mean, everybody was talking about the Lakers making a move. I was shocked the Lakers didn't come out and at least make some kind of trade deadline move, whether it was for Russ or not. I just thought the Lakers were going to come out and do something to shake it up so that they could see what they've got going into the playoffs, because we all know right now they're a play-in team. They're not anything more or less than a play-in team. That's not to say they're bad. They're just average. They're just playing like average players. A couple injuries here or there, they might miss the playoffs. That's the kind of year they're having this year. It's a very, very wonky, mediocre year, at least in the regular season. That doesn't mean they can't turn on the playoffs and play phenomenal. But that's just where they are and what they're doing. So, interesting things happened during the trade deadline. But obviously the biggest one was what happened in Philadelphia. And that's obvious. We all know that. We all know that. We all understand that. But that's all I got today for the Hoopers Log. Episode 22 is in the books. Episode 23, we will talk about the state of the NBA and where it is. We'll recap the All-Star Game weekend for you, and we'll kind of lay out the stretch run and how important it is for what's to come. Because we all know March is a big month for basketball altogether. We have obviously the March Madness, duh. But for the NBA, it's a different kind of importance, because we all know that February is huge in regards to the chemistry building and the development building. But March is different, because March is where you can start to see the teams that are going to start making their identity shift towards a playoff identity. And when they make those shifts, it's when it becomes way more valuable for what's going to happen in April and May. Because April, May, you're going to see teams change drastically from what you saw in March. But March is where that shift begins. And that's what we'll talk about more on the next show, obviously, as we talk about the All-Star break and everything moving on. Okay, thanks again for listening, everybody. We'll see you next week after the All-Star break on the 22nd of February. Have a good one.